It's time to rest now. Let your body sink slowly into the sheets beneath you, like a warm blanket wrapping around a tired soul. Breathe in softly and out even softer. There's no need to hurry, no need to worry. This moment belongs to you alone. Let your mind begin to drift as the world fades into the hush of deep water and moonlight. Listen closely. Can you hear it? The slow groan of steel against ice. The distant thrum of an engine beneath your feet. The gentle slosh of salt water, cold and endless. Our story tonight begins not in chaos, but in splendor. Our story begins aboard the most beautiful ship ever built. A floating city of velvet staircases and marble floors, of music and menus and moonlight over the Atlantic. Tonight we sail aboard the RMS Titanic, and you are there. You arrived at the docks 4 days ago, your hands trembling with the kind of excitement that leaves no room for fear. The ship towered over you like a cathedral, its smokestacks taller than any building you'd ever stood beneath. It gleamed with new paint and new money and new promises. Unsinkable, the papers called it. Majestic, a marvel of modern engineering. You believed every word. Who wouldn't? You were told this was the safest ship in the world, and you believed that too. You stood in a sea of other hopefuls, some in pearls, some in patched boots, some holding suitcases made of nothing more than twine and hope. But all of you shared the same destination, a new life, a new world, America. As you boarded, the air smelled of coal smoke and sea air. Somewhere, a violin was playing. Stewards in white gloves directed you gently to your cabin, and even if your room was small, it was more than you'd ever known. Clean sheets, a real window, and the knowledge that you were aboard something greater than yourself. You traced your fingers along the edge of the bunk and smiled. You were going somewhere. You didn't know what waited on the other side of the sea, but it had to be better than what you were leaving behind. The days passed in gentle rhythms. Breakfast with strangers who quickly became friends. Laughter in the corridors. The low, comforting rumble of the engines beneath your feet as the ship sliced through the Atlantic like a steel arrow. You wore your best clothes even when you didn't need to. You watched the sun rise over the sea and thought to yourself, this must be what peace feels like. You explored the ship slowly, carefully, as if you didn't want to use it up all at once. You wandered through third-class corridors that smelled of bread and soap, past open doors where families braided each other's hair, sang songs in languages you couldn't place, or stared out the portholes with the same dazed wonder you felt. You glimpsed the grand staircase from behind a rope, its polished brass and sweeping curves like something out of a dream. You peeked into the smoking room, where men in tuxedos sipped amber drinks and talked about stocks and steamships, and you heard someone whisper, it cost more to build this ship than some entire towns. But at night you returned to your cabin, and the world became still. You laid down and listened to the gentle hum of the Titanic's heartbeat. The engine, the water, the distant sound of a piano in second class, muffled by steel and sea. And you felt safe. You had never felt so safe. Until the night that wasn't. It began like any other, a bit colder, maybe. The steward even mentioned it when he brought you tea. Bit nippy tonight. Might want an extra blanket. You laughed and thanked him. Outside, the stars burned brighter than you'd ever seen, countless, silent, eternal. The sea was calm. The kind of calm that makes you feel like the earth has exhaled. No waves, no wind, just silence. You were half asleep when it happened. Not a crash, not a scream, just a strange kind of shiver that ran through the ship's bones and into yours. Like something distant, something too large to understand, had shifted. You sat up, listened, waited. Then came the quiet clang of footsteps in the hallway, the muffled voices, the door opening down the corridor. And still, no one seemed afraid. Confused, maybe, but not afraid. You pulled on your coat and stepped into the corridor barefoot, just for a moment, just to see. The steward's face was pale when you saw him next. Not panicked, but not calm either. Just a precaution, he said. Might want to grab your life belt, just in case. You laughed again, a little nervously this time. The Titanic needing life belts? That was like putting an umbrella over a mountain, but you obeyed. You always obeyed. You followed the slow trickle of passengers up to the deck, the cold bit into your hands. Your breath turned to mist. Still, there was no panic, just confusion, muttered questions, nervous glances. Someone asked, "Did we hit something?" Another answered, "Just ice." And you pictured a bit of snow brushing against the hull. Nothing more. But then you saw the officers, not shouting, but moving quickly, purposefully. And when you saw the first lifeboat being lowered, half empty, it didn't make sense. Why rush? Why send people off into the cold ocean with no need? You looked at the other passengers. Some were laughing. Some had gone back for coats and hats. Some refused to leave the ship at all. "I paid good money for this passage," one man said, refusing to climb into the boat. "I'll not be tossed into the sea like luggage." You hesitated. Everyone did, because no one believed the ship could sink. Not yet. Not you. Not tonight. You stay near the rail for a long time, your fingers numb against the cold brass, eyes fixed on the horizon that no longer seems quite so distant. The stars blink above you, calm and indifferent. The lifeboats creak on their ropes as they sway gently above the sea, suspended like unanswered questions. Around you, passengers shuffle and murmur, glancing nervously at one another, waiting for the calm voice of authority to tell them this is just a precaution, just practice, just something to laugh about over breakfast tomorrow. But breakfast never comes. An officer walks briskly past, calling for women and children to move forward. He doesn't shout, but there's a tone in his voice that catches in your throat, tight, urgent, trained. People begin lining up. Some obey quickly, others linger. A woman in a blue shawl clutches her husband's sleeve, refusing to let go. "I won't leave without him," she says, over and over, like a prayer she hopes might bend the rules of steel and salt. You watch the first lifeboat descend. It creaks and sways. Only half full. 20 people in a boat meant for 65. But no one truly understands the stakes yet. Not really. The ship still feels solid beneath your feet. Massive. Like it could never truly vanish. You look down at the water. It's darker than you imagined. Black as ink. Still. Too still. Not a ripple touches the side of the Titanic. It should be comforting. It's not. It's too quiet. Like the ocean is waiting. Someone next to you asks, "Did they say how big the hole was?" Another man answers, "Doesn't matter. She has watertight compartments." You hear that phrase repeated often in the next few minutes. Watertight. Safe. Impossible to sink. But deep below, in places you'll never see, the water is already coming in, fast, silent, relentless, flooding compartments, turning stairwells into rivers, steel walls into soft suggestions. The crew knows, the captain knows, but they don't say it aloud. Not yet. You're guided toward the lifeboats. A steward, face pale, gestures gently. This way, miss. You glance behind you. Where is everyone else? Where is the rest of your group? You want to wait. You want to go back to your room. Maybe you left something. A photograph, a coat, something to hold on to. But you don't, because there's a strange shift beneath your feet. The ship has begun to tilt, not sharply, barely noticeable, but the angle changes the sound of footsteps, the creak of floorboards, the way voices echo against the walls. You see it on their faces now. Not fear, not yet, just the realization that something is happening, something that won't be undone. The officer's voice returns, louder this time. Women and children only. He raises a pistol, not to threaten, but to command attention. Please, step forward. You hesitate. You've always hesitated, but now people are moving quickly. The air is sharper. You hear the sound of something heavy crashing below decks. A piano, maybe, or a trunk. No one speaks of it. But now everyone is climbing faster. You're helped into the lifeboat by two gloved hands. You recognize neither face. One man whispers, "God keep you," and then turns away. The ropes creak again and you feel the boat lower. Slowly, down into the freezing unknown. The descent is rougher than you expected. The boat jolts, drops, swings like a cradle in a storm. You grip the edge tightly, knuckles white. Others scream. A child cries. A woman is praying. Your teeth clack together with each jolt. And then water. Cold, endless. Your feet touch nothing. The ocean is all around you. Black glass stretching forever. Above, the Titanic towers like a mountain. Lights still glow in the windows. Music still drifts faintly from the grand salon. You see silhouettes, men still sipping drinks, stewards carrying trays. It doesn't look like a sinking ship. It looks like a hotel at sea. Stillness wrapped in gold and illusion. Then a sound. Sharp, grinding, low. A groan that feels like the world itself is cracking in half. The ship shifts, tilts harder. You hear shouting now. Real shouting, screams, orders, panic, and beneath it all rushing water. Your lifeboat floats gently away from the hull. A small distance. Not far, but enough to see. You watch the Titanic lean, her bow dipping slowly. Water climbing the decks like a thief. People run now, toward the back, toward the high ground. Some jump. You hear the splash. One by one, lifeboats drift into the dark, scattered like seeds across the black Atlantic. You count them. 12, maybe 14, but there were supposed to be 20, and so many still on board. The stars above shine brighter now, mocking, perhaps, or simply indifferent. A full moon lights the water, and in its reflection you see it clearly what no one thought could happen. The Titanic is dying, and you are watching her go. The water surrounds you, now utterly black, glassy, and endless, like you've been set adrift on the surface of a dream that forgot how to end. You huddle in the lifeboat with strangers whose names you don't know and might never learn. Some are weeping quietly. Others simply stare, open-mouthed, at the massive silhouette of the ship behind you. And all around there is the hush of realization, the kind that comes not as a scream, but as a weight, a slow, creeping knowledge that something irreversible is unfolding, one heartbeat at a time. The Titanic looms above you like a cathedral breaking apart. Her bow dips lower now, and you can see the water licking at the portholes, crawling higher with a quiet hunger. One by one, her lights begin to blink out, not all at once, but in clusters, as if the ship herself is trying to keep you calm, even as she fades into the sea. And still there are violins playing, faintly, from somewhere above. The same tune as before, maybe. Or maybe something slower now. Something like goodbye. The cold is like a presence of its own, not just around you, but inside you. Your breath freezes at your lips, and your fingertips burn beneath your gloves. The woman beside you clutches her child tighter, her hands trembling. She says nothing. No one does. You all watch the same terrible beauty unfold together. From this distance, the ship doesn't seem like it's in distress. Not really. It's too large, too regal. But you can hear it, the sounds of panic rising, shouting, the thud of footsteps, the snap of ropes. You see lifeboats still being lowered now, some of them tilted, others tangled. And you see people running toward the stern, climbing the rails, clinging to hope that steel and rivets will somehow hold against the pull of the sea. A man stands near the stern's edge, arms raised, eyes fixed on the sky. You can't hear what he says, but you think it might be a prayer or a farewell, or perhaps both. Then suddenly the ship lurches, a sharp, sickening tilt that pulls gasps from every boat nearby. The bow plunges deeper, and the stern lifts upward slowly, impossibly, rising like a tower trying to touch the moon. Someone in your lifeboat whispers, "She's breaking," and you feel it before you see it. A groan, deep and mechanical, shudders across the water, louder than thunder. The spine of the Titanic arches. Steel screams as it bends, and then snap. A single, staggering crack splits the night in half. You watch as the great ship's back splits open, and the stern rocks downward, slamming into the ocean with the force that sends waves rolling outward like the breath of something ancient. The bow disappears completely, swallowed. The stern bobs briefly, almost defiant, then begins to rise again. Higher now, too high. You can see every detail. The propellers massive and gleaming in the moonlight. The rudder hanging in midair like a forgotten question. The lights flicker once more, then die. And then, silence. A silence so deep it presses against your chest. Until the screaming starts. Hundreds of voices, men, women, children, all crying out at once. Not in words, but in sound. Pure, instinctive terror. You cover your ears. Others weep. Someone turns their face to their knees. No one can look away. Bodies are in the water now, thrashing, reaching, shouting names into the night. Some call for lifeboats, some for God, some for their mothers. You want to help? You do. Everyone does. But the officer in your boat holds tight to the tiller and whispers, "Stay back. If we go near, they'll swamp us all." You nod, not because you agree, but because you can't argue. Not now. Not with your hands frozen and your lungs shaking and your heart trying to believe what your eyes have just seen. The water is full of people now, floating, crying, slowly going still. The sound changes from screaming to moaning. then to sobbing, then to nothing at all, just the quiet lap of waves, just the endless black sea. The Titanic is gone. You feel that truth settle into your spine like a weight you'll carry forever. She is not sinking, she is sunk. 1,000 lives, a floating palace. A dream made of gold and steel vanished beneath the same water that had once sparkled so gently in the moonlight. And now you drift. Your boat rocks gently, each wave another soft reminder that the world continues to move, even after something like this. The sky above remains unchanged. Stars glimmer calmly. The moon offers no comfort. Around you, other lifeboats float like leaves scattered across a still pond, each one a small, fragile island of breath and disbelief. No one speaks for a long time, not because there is nothing to say, but because there is too much. You begin to cry quietly, not sobbing, just silent tears that sting your cheeks before freezing. You think of the people still in the water, of those who never made it out of their cabins, of the band still playing until the very end. You think of your shoes still sitting under the bed in your cabin, dry and folded and waiting, of the steward who brought your tea, of the note you never finished writing, and you think, I should not be here. I should not have survived, but you did. And now you drift in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, surrounded by strangers beneath a sky full of stars. On a night so cold, even your thoughts feel brittle. You survived the sinking, but what comes next? That's another story entirely. The night has never felt so long. You sit curled into yourself in the lifeboat, knees tucked against your chest, arms folded tight around your ribs, as if holding them together might stop everything else from falling apart. The cold isn't just cold anymore. It's alive. It seeps into your breath, into your bones, into the space behind your eyes. Around you, figures are motionless. The other survivors are silent now. They huddle like shadows, wrapped in blankets or in one another, each lost inside their own grief, their own disbelief, their own desperate hope that someone will come. But no one comes. Not yet. There's no horizon, only blackness. No land, no ship. Just water stretching forever in every direction. You can't tell how many hours have passed since the Titanic vanished. The stars haven't moved. The cold hasn't lifted. Time has become something else now, elastic, heavy, cruel. You try not to look at the water. You try not to think of what lies just beneath the surface. Of who? Your hands are stiff, fingers curled like dry leaves. You can't feel your toes, but you still hear things. The creak of the oars resting in their locks, the slow shifting of bodies, the faint ripple of water brushing against the side of the boat, and from time to time, a sob someone tries to swallow. You look up at the stars and wonder if anyone else is awake under the same sky. Someone in London, someone in New York. You wonder if your name is already being written on a list somewhere. Missing, presumed drowned. The officer in your boat speaks for the first time in hours. His voice is hoarse, low. Keep moving your feet, he says, or you'll lose them. A few people stir. Someone stamps their boots against the wooden planks. You try to flex your toes, but they feel like stone. You close your eyes, just for a moment, just to rest. But the image is there, waiting. The stern of the Titanic rising. The lights going out. The people in the water. The sound. That sound. You open your eyes again. You don't want to sleep. Not if it means dreaming. A girl in the corner of the boat begins to sing, very softly, almost under her breath, a lullaby maybe, or a hymn. You can't tell. Her voice trembles like a flame, but no one tells her to stop. And then someone gasps, not from fear, from recognition. A sound in the distance. You sit up, strain your ears. There, a whistle. Distant, sharp, then another. The officer stands. Lights, he mutters. There, look. You turn. At first you see nothing, just the same wall of night. But then, yes, a flicker, faint, blinking, the shape of a funnel, the rise of a mast, a ship, a ship. The words move through the boat, like breath returning to a body. They're coming. Someone found us. Thank God. The Carpathia, that's what someone calls her. You've never heard the name before, but you'll never forget it now. She's smaller than the Titanic, slower, less grand. But she is beautiful in this moment. She is salvation. You watch her get closer. The water between you sparkles with dawn now. Just the beginning of its soft streaks of blue and gray at the edge of the world. You see faces on deck, crew with ropes, blankets, stretchers. You see lifeboats converging from every direction, some with 20 people, some with 10, some half empty, some carrying the dead. Your own boat rows toward her. The motion is jerky, uneven. No one has strength left. But the sight of the ship gives you just enough to keep moving, inch by inch, stroke by stroke. When you reach the side of the Carpathia, someone lowers a rope ladder. Another voice says, "We'll haul you by sling if you can't climb." You hesitate at the edge of the lifeboat. Your legs barely work, but your arms move. You reach for the rope. You begin to climb. The wood is wet. Your fingers slip. But someone reaches down, grabs your wrist, pulls, and then you're on deck, on solid ground. The first thing you feel is heat. Not much, but enough. A blanket, a mug of something warm. You don't remember who gives it to you, only that you hold it with both hands and cry without making a sound. All around you, others are climbing aboard. Some are carried, some limp, some collapse, some weep openly. A man kisses the deck. A woman faints. A child asks where her mother is. You look back once over the rail. The lifeboats bob gently in the water like scattered leaves. The sea is calm. There is no sign of the Titanic, not even debris. She is gone, and you are alive. But survival doesn't feel the way you thought it would. Not victorious, not lucky, just quiet, just cold, and very, very tired. The deck of the Carpathia becomes a liminal space, neither land nor sea, neither safety nor home. Just planks beneath your feet and steam rising from the funnels, curling through the early morning air like breath after a long nightmare. You walk slowly, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, moving not because you know where to go, but because everyone else is moving too. There's a strange choreography to it, this silent wandering of souls pulled from the brink. The crew is kind and possibly so. One man hands you a cup of broth. Another offers dry socks. Someone asks for your name, scribbles it down on a clipboard, then gently moves on. It's all so quiet, like everyone understands instinctively that loud voices would break something already cracked. You find a place near the railing where the wood is warm from the exhaust vents. You sit. The sky is pale now, brushed with the faintest blush of dawn. Somewhere, someone is coughing. Somewhere else, a woman sings softly, holding a child wrapped in a man's coat. The notes are thin but warm, like steam rising from a tin mug. There's talk that the Carpathia turned around the moment they received Titanic's distress call. Full speed through the ice field, risking everything. You hear that the captain gave orders to ignore all danger, to go faster than the ship had ever gone before. You picture it, the crew rushing to stoke the engines, navigating by feel and prayer, pushing forward into the dark where the sea could tear steel apart. And somehow they made it. You try to imagine what they saw when they arrived. Empty boats, floating bodies. No ship, just ocean and ghosts. Someone beside you mutters, "If we'd hit the iceberg head on, we might have made it." Another says, "There weren't enough lifeboats." Not even close. You nod faintly, but you're not sure if you believe any of it. You're not sure if you believe anything anymore. They say the Titanic carried over 2,200 souls. They say more than 1,500 are gone. You close your eyes and try to imagine that number, but your mind can't hold it. It's too large. It spills over. So instead you think of one face. Just one. Someone you saw on the deck last night. Someone who smiled at you in passing, or helped you with your coat, or stood beside you in line at dinner. Someone who isn't here. You don't know their name, but you remember their voice, and it's enough to break you. A tear rolls down your cheek. Then another. You don't wipe them away. You let them fall, warm at first, then cold. The woman beside you reaches out and places a hand on your knee. She doesn't speak. You don't have to. It's enough. You stay like that for what feels like hours, listening to the low hum of the Carpathia's engines and the sound of seagulls beginning to follow in the ship's wake. It almost feels like the world is waking up again. Slowly, carefully. Below deck, cabins have been cleared to make space for survivors. You're guided down a narrow hallway lined with blankets and crates of supplies. A young steward with a tired smile hands you a cup of tea and points to a space near the boiler room, warm, dry, safe. You lie down on the hard floor, pulling the wool around your shoulders. Sleep doesn't come easily, but eventually exhaustion wins. Not the kind of sleep that rests the soul, but the kind that simply turns off the lights for a little while. When you wake, it's evening. The lamps are lit. The ship is still sailing. You hear voices above, laughter and strange bursts, startling, raw, almost painful in its return. Someone is telling a story about a lifeboat that got lost, about a crewman who rowed for hours in circles before seeing the flare. Someone else is sharing bread. People begin trading names, hometowns, pieces of themselves they thought they'd never speak of again. You join them slowly, say your name out loud. It feels foreign in your mouth, like a souvenir from another life. You're alive, but something is different. You carry the weight of what was lost, not as a burden, but as a presence. It hangs beneath your skin. You return to the railing. The wind is softer now, the sea calmer. Somewhere ahead lies New York, lights, newspapers, headlines that will say tragedy in bold letters. But they won't capture this. Not the quiet, not the small kindnesses, not the way the night held your breath in its teeth. They won't capture how it felt to listen to the band play as the ship died, or how you tried not to shiver so your seatmate could rest against your shoulder, or how, even in the middle of all that cold, A stranger gave you their gloves. You look back over the sea and whisper a silent prayer, not of thanks, not even of mourning, just a small, breathless sentence. I remember you. And then you let the wind carry it away. Morning again. You barely notice the change at first. The transition from night to day is so soft, so quiet, that it's almost as if the ship itself is hesitant to break the stillness. But slowly the pale light begins to bloom across the decks of the Carpathia, spilling over faces that barely slept and feet still swollen from cold. You stretch slowly, your body aching in strange places, your knees, your shoulders, your neck. The thin blanket is damp with breath and sea air, but still you cling to it. It smells faintly of wool and salt, and you feel oddly grateful for the weight of it, the way it anchors you to the present. A crewman walks by and offers a smile. We're nearly there, he says, voice low and kind. New York's on the horizon. You blink at him, then look out toward the water. You don't see anything yet, only the sea, shimmering under the early sun, but his words echo inside you. Nearly there. The thought is both a comfort and a sorrow, because arriving means stepping into a world that doesn't know. Not yet. A world that still believes the Titanic is sailing. You don't speak much during breakfast. The food is warm but strange. Tinned peaches, hard rolls, weak coffee that feels like a blessing. Some people are talking now, gathered in quiet clusters, exchanging stories like puzzle pieces. You overhear fragments. A woman in lifeboat 6, a man who dove and swam, a child found clinging to a bench cushion, blue but breathing. You listen, not to the words themselves, but to the silences between them. That's where the truth lives, in the things people can't say. By mid-morning, the skyline begins to rise from the mist. Tall shapes, blurred by distance and haze, growing clearer with every passing hour. You realize you're afraid. Not of the sea, not anymore, but of what waits on land. The questions, the crowds, the reporters, the telegrams, the rows of families waiting at the docks, clutching names, photos, hope, and the knowledge that some of them will turn away in tears. The Carpathia slows as it enters the harbor. The city unfolds before you, wide and unfamiliar, its buildings like cliffs of stone and glass. You lean over the rail and watch the tugboats approach, their whistles sharp and echoing across the water. The deck grows crowded as passengers gather, their eyes fixed on the land, some weeping, some silent, some gripping the hands of strangers like old friends. Someone hands you a card. It has your name written on it in a trembling hand, along with a cabin number and a hospital address. They're trying to organize you now, sort you, help you. But you barely see the letters. You stare instead at the people waiting on the docks, at the hundreds of hats and coats and reaching hands. And somewhere in that crowd you realize are people calling your name, or someone else's, hoping, bracing. The gangplank lowers with a groan. A hush spreads over the deck. One by one, survivors descend, blinking in the daylight, their feet touching the solid wood of the pier like it's sacred ground. Some are met with cries and embraces. Others walk alone. You step forward slowly, your breath catching as your shoes meet dry earth for the first time in days. It doesn't feel real. Reporters rush forward, flashes popping like distant thunder. Questions are shouted. Were there enough lifeboats? Did the ship break in two? What happened in the final hour? You turn your face away. You can't speak of it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You're taken to a hall, some large building, repurposed overnight into a shelter. Cots line the walls. Clerks with tired eyes move between them, gathering names, checking lists. A woman offers you a towel and helps you wash your hands. Another brings you new clothes, ill-fitting, but clean. You sit on the edge of a bed, clutching the fabric of your borrowed shirt, and feel something strange blooming in your chest. Guilt, perhaps, or simply the shock of survival. People begin arriving throughout the day. Relatives, journalists, strangers offering rooms and soup and coin. You watch it all in a kind of daze. You don't move. You don't speak. You simply breathe. In, out, in again. It's enough for now. Later that evening, someone asks you to give a statement. Just tell us what happened, they say gently. You shake your head. You don't have the words. How do you explain the color of the sky when the stern lifted into the stars? How do you describe the sound of steel breaking, of voices silenced one by one? How do you explain the weight of surviving something no one should have? So you don't speak. You simply close your eyes and see it all again. The staircase, the music, the lifeboat creaking in the dark, and above it all, the stars bright and indifferent. You rest that night in a room that smells of lemon soap and quiet mercy. The sheets are stiff. The pillow smells unfamiliar. But you sleep, not deeply, not without dreams, but you sleep. And when you wake, the world is still turning. The sun rises on your first full day back on land, and you almost forget where you are. The ceiling above your bed is too low, the walls too quiet. You've grown used to the creaking of lifeboats, the hiss of the ocean, and the murmurs of strangers trying not to cry. Now everything feels still in a way that's too loud. You lie there for a long while, staring at the cracks in the plaster and listening to the slow tick of a wall clock. It's a peaceful sound, but each tick feels like a reminder that time has moved on without all the people who were lost. You're given breakfast in a quiet dining room, served by volunteers who try to smile, but can't always manage it. You sit at a long table with other survivors you recognize by the same quiet in their eyes, the same slowness in their movements. One man stirs his coffee for several minutes without drinking. A woman beside him keeps rubbing her fingers as if trying to warm hands that still believe they're frozen. No one says much, but in this silence there is an understanding deeper than words. A letter is placed in front of you by a Red Cross worker. It's a telegram from someone you love, someone who saw your name on a survivor list and sent the only thing they could. We are so thankful. Come home safe. Your hands shake as you read it. Not from fear, not from cold, just from the strange, surreal weight of being thought dead and now being known to be alive. Later, you're asked again to share your story. A kind-eyed nurse offers a pencil and paper, saying gently, "Only if you'd like." You take it, not because you're ready, but because something inside you whispers that the memory must be preserved before it begins to fade, or change, or soften into something it wasn't. You start slowly. The handwriting is shaky, but you write the first thing that comes to you. It was too quiet for a ship that size. In the following hours, you learn more. The stories have begun to form shapes, names, identities. You hear about Captain Smith, how he went down with the ship, refusing a lifeboat. You hear about the band, playing until the very end, about the wireless operators who sent distress signals until the electricity sparked at their feet. About the chef who drank so much whiskey he swam in the freezing water and survived somehow when others did not. Every detail feels impossible, and yet you believe every word, because you were there. You wander through the temporary shelter, past cots and folded coats and tired faces, and find yourself at a window. Outside, the world continues. Carts roll down streets, bells chime from shop doors, the smell of roasted peanuts drifts from a vendor's cart. Life goes on, but for you, it feels different. Like the volume has been turned down. Like you're watching from the other side of glass. A small girl walks past you in the hall. She's holding a stuffed rabbit, its ear sewn back on with blue thread. She looks up at you with wide eyes. "Were you on the big ship?" she asks. You nod. She tilts her head. "Did it really sink?" You pause, then nod again. She looks thoughtful, then says softly, "Mama said the stars looked sad that night." And then she skips away, as if the moment never happened. You sit with those words for hours. The stars looked sad. It's not something you thought to say, but it feels true. They did look sad. Or maybe they just looked away. By evening, the city is glowing with gaslight and lamplight, and from your window, you can see ships moving in and out of the harbor. You find yourself staring at the water again, searching for shapes in the waves. Not the Titanic, you know she's gone, but perhaps something she left behind. The memory of her lights, the echo of her grandeur, the ghost of her promise. That night you dream again, not of the sinking itself, but of the things before. The grand staircase, gleaming and perfect. The music that drifted like honey through the air. The way your shoes clicked on the marble floor. You dream of laughter, of elegant dinners, of the way the ship hummed like a heartbeat underfoot. And when you wake, you carry that sound with you, the soft, rhythmic pulse of something too beautiful to last. As the days pass, you begin to prepare for the journey home. Train tickets are arranged. A satchel of donated clothes is pressed into your hands. You're given coins for food, envelopes for letters, instructions for what to do if the memories come back too sharp, too sudden. You nod politely. Thank the nurse, fold the paper. But deep down, you know the memories are not going anywhere. Not really. Before you leave, you walk once more to the harbor's edge. The docks are quieter now. A fog rolls low over the water, curling around the pilings and softening every edge. You stand there for a long time, hands in your pockets, watching the ripples stretch out and disappear. You imagine the ship beneath those waves, not broken, but sleeping, resting in silence far from the music and voices that once danced through her halls. You say goodbye, not aloud, not with a wave, but in the way you shift your weight, the way your breath leaves your chest, the way you close your eyes and whisper, "I will not forget you." And then you turn and walk back into the world. The train ride home is quiet. You sit near the window, your fingers resting against the glass, watching towns blur past like watercolor dreams, each station, a flicker of life you can't quite grasp. You don't speak much, not because there's nothing to say, but because every word still feels too heavy. In the seat across from you, a woman dozes, her chin tucked into her collar, clutching a worn leather bag, as if it's the only real thing left in the world. She hasn't said her name. You haven't asked. But there's comfort in her silence, a shared kind of stillness. Outside, the landscape rolls by, quiet farms wrapped in morning mist, sleepy villages where smoke curls from chimneys, Children walking in twos down dirt roads with knapsacks bouncing at their hips. It feels like another world, a safer one. A world where ships do not split apart in the night. You wonder if these people have heard yet, if they know what happened far out at sea, or if they still believe the Titanic is floating somewhere, late but intact. Someone offers you a biscuit and tea from a tray. You thank them with a nod. The tea is weak, but warm. You sip it slowly, holding the heat in your chest, like a lantern. There's a strange, quiet ache in your body. Now, not pain, exactly. Just fatigue that reaches all the way into your bones. The kind of weariness that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from knowing too much, too suddenly. The train clicks steadily over the tracks, a soft rhythm that lulls you toward memory. You remember how excited you were to board Titanic, how you stood on the dock with your ticket in hand, heart hammering like you were stepping into a dream. The way the ship shimmered in the sun, the laughter in the air, the scent of varnish and salt and polished wood. You remember the chandeliers, the endless carpets, the way everything smelled of linen and hope. You remember the way the halls echoed at night when you walked them alone. Your hands tighten in your lap. The conductor passes, tipping his hat politely. Someone in the back of the carriage begins to hum a soft, familiar tune you can't quite place. It floats above the clatter of the wheels, simple and sad. You let your eyes fall closed, not to sleep, but just to rest behind your own thoughts. When the train pulls into your station, you almost miss it. The name glides past the window in neat painted letters. You stand, legs stiff, blanket still wrapped around your shoulders like armor. Outside, the platform is nearly empty. Only two people wait there, an older man in a hat, and a woman with her hands clasped tightly under her chin. When she sees you, she gasps, then runs forward, arms outstretched. It takes you a moment to remember how to move, how to let yourself be held. You don't speak at first. You simply melt into her coat, into her trembling hands, into the scent of lavender and soap, and something that smells like home. She says your name again and again, like she can't believe it's real. You hold on tighter. There are no words big enough for a moment like this. At home, everything is smaller than you remembered. The doorknob is cool in your hand. The steps creak just the same. Your bedroom smells like old paper and dust, and the curtains still catch the morning sun in soft golden stripes. You sit on the edge of the bed and touch the quilt like it's made of cloud. They've kept everything the same. On your dresser, a newspaper clipping has been folded carefully beneath a hairbrush. The headline reads, "Titanic lost." Below it, a list of survivors. Your name is circled, faintly. You trace it with one fingertip, heart swelling with something too tangled to name. In the kitchen, someone makes stew. The smell is rich and grounding. You eat slowly, tasting each bite like it might disappear. You listen to the silverware, the kettle whistling low on the stove, the clock ticking gently beside the door. These sounds feel sacred now. Simple things once unnoticed. Now the foundation of your recovery. At night you can't sleep. Not yet. You lie in bed, eyes open to the darkness. Sometimes you hear the echo of water lapping gently, then roaring. You remember the way the ship tilted, the sound of porcelain breaking, the thunder of collapsing metal. You remember the stars. You remember how still the world became. You rise, wrap the blanket tighter, and step outside. The grass is damp and cool beneath your feet. Above you, the sky is clear, full of constellations you once learned the names of but now forget. You stand there for a long time, staring upward. Then you whisper, not loudly, not sadly, but softly, "I remember you." It's not a prayer, not quite, just a promise. Days begin to pass with a rhythm you barely notice, like slow waves brushing against a quiet shore. You wake, eat, read, walk, sleep. People speak to you kindly, sometimes too kindly. They tilt their heads when they ask questions, as if afraid your answers might shatter. You answer when you can. You smile when expected, but your mind is somewhere else, always somewhere else. In a cold sea, in the creak of a lifeboat, in the heartbeat of a ship that no longer breathes. You begin writing letters, not because anyone asked you to, but because your hands need to move and your heart needs somewhere to go. You write to people you never met, passengers whose names you read in the paper, ones who didn't come back. You write to them as if they're old friends. You tell them about the fog outside your window, about the garden that's starting to bloom again. You tell them how strange it is to hear birdsong in the morning after nights filled with screams. Some days you go into town. The world looks the same but feels different. People glance at you, then look away. Some have read your name in the paper. Some know what boat you came back on. They don't know what to say, neither do you. So you buy your bread and eggs in silence, letting the coins clink gently into the shopkeeper's hand like a soft percussion to a life resumed. One morning you hear the piano. It comes from down the road, from a house with open windows and white lace curtains. The melody is faint, but familiar, something that was played on the Titanic, though you can't remember when. You stop walking. You close your eyes. For a moment, you're there again, standing by the grand staircase, holding the rail, watching the light dance across polished brass. Then it fades, and you're back. You find yourself collecting small things now, a feather from the garden, a stone from the path, a pressed flower from a page you never finished reading. You keep them in a box under your bed, not because they mean anything specific, but because they're real, because they're now, because they weren't on the ship. At night, the dreams grow softer, less frantic. The ship still visits, but it no longer sinks. Sometimes it just floats, impossibly bright, in a sea that sparkles like glass. In these dreams, everyone is safe. The band plays, the lights stay on. You walk the halls without fear, and when you wake, the quiet doesn't feel as heavy. You write in a journal now, just a few lines each day. Nothing dramatic, nothing poetic, just moments. Today I saw two birds fight over a crust of bread. Today I laughed at something I can't remember now. Today I thought of the man who gave me his gloves. I wonder what his name was. The guilt begins to loosen its grip, little by little. You let yourself smile again, first in private, then in company. You begin to sing softly when you clean. You tap your fingers on the table in rhythm with the ticking clock. You live. You don't forget, but you live. Then one day a letter arrives, thick envelope, handwritten address. Inside, an invitation, a gathering, a remembrance. Survivors from different cities coming together to share stories, support, silence. At first you think, I can't do that. But then, slowly, you begin to consider, maybe they remember the same things I do. Maybe we could speak without having to explain everything first. You place the invitation on your desk. You stare at it for a long time, and finally, with a slow breath, you nod. You will go, not to relive it, not to prove anything, just to be near others who also walked away from the cold. The day of the gathering arrives quietly, wrapped in pale morning light and the scent of early autumn. You dress slowly, hands lingering on the fabric of your sleeves, brushing invisible dust from your collar. The mirror reflects a face both familiar and changed, eyes a little deeper, posture a little softer, as if shaped by wind and salt and time. You pin your hair just the way you used to, then unpin it again. There's no right way to prepare for something like this. The hall where the survivors' gathering takes place is old and echoing, with tall windows and soft, warm benches. Someone has placed flowers on every table, simple ones, field-picked, delicate. You recognize no one at first, but then a woman walks by and nods at you very slightly. Her coat is the same color as the blanket from the lifeboats. You remember her hands, how they trembled when she held a cup of tea. The gathering is not loud. It's not formal. There are no speeches at the beginning. Just people, sitting, breathing, holding one another in glances and in silence. You take a seat near the window where the sun pools on the floor like honey, and you wait. One by one, the stories begin. No one is forced to speak, but when someone does, everyone listens. A man with a white mustache recounts how he helped row lifeboat number 12. A woman in a navy dress speaks of the last time she saw her sister, standing on the second-class deck, waving through the smoke. Someone reads from a journal entry. Another hums the tune the band played. You sit very still, your hands folded tightly, your heart moving between sorrow and warmth with every word. When it's your turn, you don't stand. You don't even speak right away. You simply breathe in the room, let it fill you. Then you say softly, "I remember the silence the most. After the ship was gone, that was the loudest thing I've ever heard." And everyone nods, gently, knowingly, because they heard it too. There is a comfort in this room, a quiet strength. No one is asked to explain their pain or rank their grief or prove their presence. You are all bound, not by what happened to you, but by what you still carry. It's not a reunion. It's a remembering. Later, over tea, you speak with a woman who had been a stewardess aboard Titanic. She tells you about her favorite tray, the one with the brass handles, and how she polished it every night, even when no one noticed. She laughs when she says it, and you find yourself laughing too, tears in your eyes. You speak with a boy who was rescued as a child, now grown, who remembers the way the stars looked from the lifeboat and how someone gave him a sugar cube to keep him from crying. Outside, the wind rustles the trees. A train whistle sounds in the distance. The city moves around you, but in here time is curled gently into a pause. As the gathering draws to a close, a man begins to sing. No one asks him to, he just does. A soft, wavering voice that grows steadier with every note. It's a hymn, one that was sung during the lifeboat hours. You don't remember all the words, but you hum along. Others do too. And in that moment, surrounded by those who lived the same night as you, something inside you begins to stitch closed, not completely, but enough to breathe a little deeper. You walk home under a sky blushing with dusk. The streets are damp from an earlier rain. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone. And in your coat pocket, you carry a card with names and addresses of new friends, people you never met until today. but somehow always new. That night you light a candle, not out of ritual, but out of instinct. You place it on your windowsill and watch its flame flicker against the glass. The room fills with a gentle glow. You sit beside it, hands around a mug of something warm, and you whisper a few names to the flame, not all, just a few. Enough to keep close, enough to honor what can't be forgotten. You do not cry, you do not feel heavy. You feel ... quiet, the good kind, the kind that follows after music, the kind that comes before sleep. You close your eyes and let the candlelight dance behind your lids, and you rest. Time becomes softer after the gathering, like silk worn at the edges. You begin to notice it, not in minutes or hours, but in changes of light, in the feel of the air, in the way shadows move across your wall by afternoon. You start measuring days by small comforts. A cup of tea held with both hands, a letter received, the sound of wind through bare branches. You still think of the Titanic, but not only in darkness now. Sometimes in quiet moments you remember the gold trim on the dining room chairs, the way the light shimmered across the staircase banister, the faint scent of lemon polish and lavender soap. There's peace in letting the memory soften, not fade, just soften, like something fragile placed in a drawer lined with velvet. You visit it when you choose, not when it chooses you. That in itself feels like a kind of healing. People begin to ask different questions. Not what happened, but how you are. You don't always know how to answer. Some days you feel steady. Other days you feel like a boat still rocking in phantom waves. But you're learning to let both truths exist. You've stopped pretending to be untouched. You're not. You're changed. And that's okay. You begin walking every afternoon. Just around your neighborhood at first, then a little farther past the post office, past the park, past the old church with the crooked bell tower. Your feet find a rhythm. The sky becomes a familiar friend. You learn to watch the seasons shift. Each leaf that falls feels like a reminder. Time passes. Grief changes shape. You pick up journaling again, more than a line or two. Pages now. Sometimes about memories, sometimes about today. You write about the way rain sounds on the roof, or how the cat next door waits for sunbeams. You write about the dream you had where the ship didn't sink, where it sailed on toward New York, and you danced in the salon to the sound of a violin. You write, and in doing so, you stitch yourself together gently. One day, you'll receive a small parcel in the mail. No return address. Inside, a pair of gloves, worn but familiar. You recognize the stitching, the initials sewn inside the cuff. They belonged to the man who gave them to you the night the cold crept in. You never knew his name, but now you know someone remembered. Someone found them. Someone sent them back to you. You cry when you hold them. But it's not sorrow. It's something else, something deeper, something like grace. You keep the gloves in a drawer lined with linen, next to the pressed flower, the smooth stone, the letter from the Red Cross. And sometimes, on very still evenings, you take them out and hold them in your lap, as if warming your hands in a memory. You attend church again. You sit near the back. You don't sing the hymns, but you listen. And when the congregation stands, you rise quietly with them. It feels like joining something, not because you're expected to, but because you choose to. You find yourself speaking more, too, with neighbors, with the woman who brings bread to the parish, with the child who leaves chalk drawings on the sidewalk near your door. You don't talk about the sinking unless someone asks, and even then, only in pieces. But you talk about the stars, the night sky, the silence after, and people listen gently like it matters, because it does. One night, you hear music drifting in from somewhere nearby, a fiddle soft and slow. You lean against your windowsill and let it wash over you. The notes curl like smoke, like mist, like something ancient returning. And in your mind, you walk once more through the Titanic's grand hallway, not in fear, not in mourning, but in awe. You see the chandeliers, the woodwork, the pressed collars and shining shoes. You hear laughter, glass clinking, the hush before a waltz. You remember how alive it all was, and how, for a moment, you were a part of something vast and beautiful. The ship may be gone, but it lived. And so did you. You whisper a thank you into the night, to the ocean, to the stars, to the music that never stopped playing, even when no one could hear it. Then you pull your blanket tighter. You light a small candle, and you let sleep find you. Spring arrives slowly that year, as if unsure its welcome. Buds appear on the trees one morning, like a quiet suggestion. The air shifts, less biting, more fragrant, threaded with the scent of rain-damp earth and warming stone. You begin opening your windows again. The breeze stirs your curtains and lifts the corners of your letters. It feels like breath, like a gentle reminder you are still here. Your walks stretch longer. Sometimes you take a notebook with you, sometimes not. You pass through the cemetery at the edge of town, not out of sadness, but out of respect. You trace the names on the stones, wonder about their stories, their endings. One day you bring a flower from your windowsill pot, a tiny white bloom with petals like soft paper, and you leave it by a grave marked only Infant 1911. You don't know them, but the gesture feels right. One afternoon, you visit the harbor. It's not the same harbor you departed from, not the one Titanic left behind, but it carries the same scent of salt and rope and seagulls and wind. You stand by the edge and let the water speak to you. The tide moves in rhythms older than grief, older than names. You close your eyes and feel the wind on your face and pretend for a moment that the ship never left, that it still waits white and vast, just beyond the mist. Back at home, you begin to bake again. Little things, scones, bread, pies with too much cinnamon. The scent wraps around your house like a warm shawl, and the neighbors begin to knock, gently, with empty plates and soft smiles. You offer slices wrapped in parchment, and they offer news, laughter, gossip about the cat who adopted the grocer. You don't always laugh, but you smile, and that is enough. One night you dream of a hallway you've never seen before. It's not Titanic. It's somewhere smaller, more humble, but full of light. You walk it barefoot. The floor is warm. The walls are lined with framed photographs. Some you recognize, some you don't. At the end of the hallway is a door. You do not open it. You simply stand there, your hand on the knob, and breathe. When you wake, you remember the feeling of calm, the scent of soap and old wood, the sound of a ticking clock far down the corridor. You begin writing letters again, not to the lost, but to the living, to friends you haven't seen in years, to cousins you barely know, To a teacher who once read your essay aloud, you thank them. You tell them the sky looked like silk the night the ship disappeared. You tell them that silence can teach you things no book ever could. And sometimes people write back. Their letters are full of springtime and babies and recipes and the ache of missing things they never had. You read them slowly, letting each word sit gently in your hands like a sparrow. You reply, and in doing so, you realize something that feels impossibly huge. Life is asking for your company again. There are still moments of drifting of heaviness, days when you wake from dreams of lifeboats or ice, and you lie very still, listening for music that isn't there. But there is kindness in how those days pass. They visit, then move on, like fog lifting from a field. You volunteer at the church now, folding linens, sweeping, serving tea. You listen more than you speak, and people have come to appreciate that about you. You are the one who sits beside the widow with no words, who walks with the boy who won't meet anyone's eyes. You are quiet but present, and somehow in this quiet you have become someone people trust. Someone asks you once if you believe in miracles. You think about it for a long time. You think of the last starry night aboard the Titanic, of the man who gave you his gloves, of the child who stopped crying when someone sang. You think of the candle you lit, the letter that arrived, the gloves returned to your hands. You say, I think miracles are small and soft, and sometimes they hurt. And the person nods and says, yes, that sounds right. Summer arrives like a hush instead of a shout. It creeps in with golden evenings and the hum of bees near the lavender bush outside your window. The town grows livelier. Children chase each other down cobblestone paths. Laundry flutters like flags across fences, and ice clinks in tall glasses on porches lined with creaking chairs. You sit out in the evenings now, a book in your lap you rarely read, letting the light settle on your skin like a soft shawl. You no longer brace against the quiet. It feels like a friend now, something earned. One day a boy from the neighborhood stops by. He's heard you were on the Titanic. You expect fear in his eyes, or morbid curiosity. But there's neither. Only awe. Was it really the biggest ship ever built? He asks. You nod. Did it feel like a floating castle? You smile, this time with warmth, and say yes, it really did. And for the first time in what feels like years, you tell the story not with dread or trembling, but like a fairy tale. The chandeliers, the velvet stairs, the orchestra that played in the middle of the ocean. The boy listens wide-eyed, completely still, and then whispers, that sounds beautiful. And you say it was. Not everything is beautiful, of course. Some memories still come in sharp flashes ice in the dark, screams echoing across water, the crack of a ship breaking in half. But now those images don't rise up to drown you. They drift, they soften, they coexist with the rest, the warmth of a stranger's coat, the hush of prayer before dawn, the way someone's hand found yours in the lifeboat without a word. You take up mending. A neighbor brings you a basket of clothes, nothing fancy, just worn hems and missing buttons. Your fingers move over the fabric, familiar and steady. Each stitch becomes a meditation. As you sew, you think of all the things that can be repaired and all the things that can't, and how maybe both are sacred in their own way. You begin speaking in church, not sermons, just small reflections. A memory, a piece of scripture. A story from that night when faith was a flicker between gasps. People listen with their eyes closed. One woman weeps silently. A man places his hand over his heart. You do not speak often, but when you do, the room always feels a little more still. Your dreams change again. Now you walk through Titanic not as a passenger, but as a guide. The halls are empty, but warm. You open doors and leave them ajar. You light lamps that never flicker. Sometimes you find children curled up on velvet benches, safe and sleeping. Sometimes you pass the musicians, still playing, their faces serene. In these dreams, the ship no longer sinks. It becomes something else, a place of remembrance, of peace, a cathedral beneath the sea. You wake from these dreams calm and grateful. One evening, while sitting beneath the stars, you hear someone ask you a question softly, almost to themselves. Why did you survive? It's not an accusation, just a wonder. You look up at the sky for a long time before answering. Maybe to remember, maybe to help others remember, maybe ... just because. And you both sit in the quiet that follows, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. The gloves remain in your drawer. You take them out sometimes, not to wear, but to hold, to thank, to honor. You still don't know the man's name, but in your heart he has many. Kindness, courage, sacrifice. You think of him when you open doors for others, when you give your seat away, when you bake an extra loaf of bread without knowing who will need it. The world moves on. New inventions, new tragedies. The Titanic fades from headlines, from urgency, from the fresh pain of the world. But you still carry her not as a wound, but as a thread, woven into the fabric of who you are. You receive a letter from another survivor, one you met at the gathering. She writes of a garden she's planting, of the way the light hits her porch, of a night she watched the stars and didn't cry. You write back with a pressed petal from your lavender pot and a note that simply says, "We are still here." And that means something. Autumn rolls in again, like a soft sigh across the fields. The leaves begin to change first, a few golden edges, then full blushes of crimson and amber falling from the trees like whispers. You rake them slowly each day, not because you must, but because it feels good to do something rhythmic, something gentle. The air smells of smoke and cinnamon, of earth and wool. You wrap a scarf around your shoulders and sit beneath the old tree, watching the sky darken a little earlier each night. Sometimes the memories return suddenly uninvited, like a gust that knocks over a teacup. You'll be walking home with bread or folding laundry, and in a blink you're there again. The cold on your cheeks, the frantic shouting, the unbearable tilt of the world. But it doesn't last long now. You breathe through it. You put your hand on your chest, feel the steady beat, and remind yourself, this is now. I am safe, I am home. Your neighbors ask if you'll be telling your story at the school this year. You hesitate, but then you say yes. Not because you enjoy it, but because it matters. You want the children to know not just what happened, but how people survived, how kindness still bloomed even in icy water. You stand before them in a quiet classroom, their desks too big for their little legs, and you tell them not just about the sinking, but about the music, the blankets. The moment someone wrapped their arms around you and said, "Hold on," you watch them listen wide-eyed still. And at the end, one child raises their hand and asks, "Were you scared?" You smile, not at the question, but at the honesty in it. "Yes," you say. Very, but I wasn't alone. Later, as you leave, the teacher presses a note into your hand. It's written in crayon. Just one sentence. Thank you for surviving. You frame it. Not proudly, quietly. You keep it beside the gloves. In the evenings, you begin writing something more permanent. Not just letters or journal entries, but pages that might become a book. Not a dramatic one, not a grand telling. Just your voice, soft and steady, moving across the paper like a breeze. You write about the ship as it was, its beauty, its wonder, its weight. You write about the people, their laughter, their shoes, the way they held on to one another when the world tilted. You write so they won't be forgotten. Sometimes you pause and press your hand to the page, remembering the exact feeling of that night, the sting of salt, the strain in your arms, the way the stars looked brighter when all else was dark. You end each entry the same way. I am still here. I remember you. The fog begins to roll in more often as winter nears. It settles over the town like a woolen blanket, soft and slow. You walk through it carefully, your boots crunching against damp leaves, your breath curling ahead of you like steam from a kettle. You light candles earlier now, keeping one in the hallway and another by the hearth. They flicker gently as you pass, casting long shadows that feel more like companions than ghosts. You receive another letter, this one from a woman who had been just 16 when the ship went down. She writes that she's moved closer to her grandchildren, that she finally threw away the shoes she wore in the lifeboat, that she thinks of you often. You write back the next day. You tell her about your dreams. You tell her the ocean has stopped roaring in them. You hang her letter beside the first, beside the note from the child. Your wall is slowly becoming a map of quiet memory, stitched together with care. You run your hand along the paper. It rustles like leaves. On the anniversary of the sinking, you make tea before dawn. You sit by the window in the dark, candle-lit, hands wrapped around the warm mug. The house is silent, but not lonely. You close your eyes and listen, not for screams or rushing water, but for music. And there it is, somewhere deep within you, the slow, steady melody of strings carried by the sea. You whisper again, I remember you. And this time the silence answers back, not with pain, not with sorrow, but with peace. Winter comes not with a storm, but with stillness. The world softens again beneath a quiet layer of frost. Roofs shimmer in the morning. Trees stand bare and proud. The pond near the church freezes around the edges. You pull your coat tighter and breathe out a slow fog of warmth into the cold air. The days are short, but not heavy. You have found a rhythm again, a life not untouched, but rewoven. You wake with the sun, make your tea, and move through your morning like someone who knows what it means to be still. The memories are never far, but they no longer control your shape. They've settled into you like old bones, part of the structure, quiet, present, enduring. You finish your book, not for anyone else really, just for yourself. You bind it in twine and place it on your shelf between an old prayer book and your grandmother's hymnal. Maybe one day someone will read it, maybe not, but it exists now. The story is told, and the telling was the point. You visit the coast once more. Not the same day, not even the same year, but a day close enough to the one that changed everything. The sea looks different this time, calmer perhaps. Or maybe you are. You stand with your boots in the sand, the wind in your scarf, and your heart strangely steady. You say their names again, not out loud, not all of them, just a few. You let them drift into the air like mist. Let the sea hold them. You imagine the ship as it was, not broken and rusted at the bottom of the ocean, but bright and breathing, alive with voices and light. And then you let it go, gently, not because you forget, but because you forgive. You walk back slowly. The footprints you leave behind are soft, but they stay a while, pressed into the sand, like quiet echoes. That evening, someone plays a violin nearby. The notes are low and golden, rising through the chill like smoke. You sit near your window, watching the first flakes of snow spiral under the streetlight. You do not need a candle tonight. The glow from outside is enough. You think of all you've survived, not just the night the ship went down, but the long, slow years that followed. The cold days, the empty chairs, the quiet meals, the echoes in your chest that took time to name. And still here you are, still breathing, still remembering, still here. You climb into bed. The sheets are cool, the blankets heavy. You sink into them like a sigh. The wind rattles faintly against the window panes. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and goes quiet. You close your eyes. And this time, when you dream of the Titanic, it does not break apart. It does not scream. It does not fall. It sails, smoothly, endlessly, across a glass sea under a sky so full of stars it feels like daylight. You stand at the rail and smile. And for the first time in a long, long while, you sleep.